Mozi Botnet is back with a new tactic.
We were talking about some of the spikes in IoT botnets, and I think you have a story for us around the Mozi botnet with its new feature.
Yes, Bindu, thanks for asking about that. Basically, Mozi Botnet is not a new one. We all know about that. It's one of the most popular IoT botnets out there. Today's story is about the new pivots and new techniques they incorporated into their architecture to propagate more, right? Before going that, what's Mozi? Mozi is a P2P based on DHT protocol botnet known to target various IoT devices. It started off targeting various routers, DVRs with weak telnet passwords and various vulnerabilities in various IoT devices. That's how it started propagating itself. With frequent intervals, what it does is kind of added new vulnerabilities or maybe new tactics to its arsenal. For example, now it has about 23 types of IoT-based vulnerabilities. At each time, it added new vulnerabilities to its arsenal. That's how it actually expanding itself. What's a typical use by Mozi? Mozi is known to launch various DDoS attacks, which is typical for various IoT botnets. Also, besides that, it could do data exfiltration, command or payload execution, depending upon what kind of commands they are instructed of. Basically, where does this Mozi botnet came out? The source codes for Mozi basically derived from Mirai, which we all know. Most of the botnets have some sort of relation with Mirai. Gasket is well known in the past for DDoS-based attacks. And I think that's where they kind of borrowed their DDoS component. And IoT Reaper botnet. What's a new pivot actually? In this new iteration, what Mozi is doing is it started targeting network gateways from various device manufacturers. What are these device manufacturers? I think it's targeting from Netgear, Hawaii, and GTE-based network gateways. And this research has been done by Microsoft-based researchers. Why network gateways are prime targets and what is the advantage for them as a bad actor is because you're getting access to the crown jewel of the network gateway to the corporate networks, right? Once you got into the network gateway, it's easier to do the lateral movement. So that's one of the allure to basically targeting these gateways. And what happens once you get into a gateway? The things are unlimited. Basically, they perform various man-in-the-middle types of attacks like HTTP hijacking as well as DNS spoofing because they have access to that gateway. By doing this, they can actually stay hidden for a longer time. They can do various nefarious activities. Okay, what happened? How is this specific iteration of the Mozi botnet is maintaining its privilege, escalation, persistence? It seems that on infected devices, it's checking for a folder by name overlay folder, which exploits basically a CVE from 2015. And like you say, it's basically 6 years old CVE, and still it's able to leverage that for its propagation. What it does is, if it is able to exploit that CVE from 2015, what it does is it provides its access to some folders on these Unix or Linux-based OSs, which are under xcrc.d and xcinit.d. What basically these are nothing but basically standard startup folders in any Linux-based world. So what happens after it gains access? What it does is it kind of blocks access to specific ports, like about 5 to 6 ports, TCP ports. They're like 23. Basically, they're related to Telnet and alternate Telnet. 7547 is related to TRO47, and 35,523 and 58,000 about the 6 ports, actually it blocks access to these ports by anybody, not only by administrators, even by maybe competing botnets. It doesn't want to give any access to these ports. In that way, it can control access to these botnets.
Yeah, we've been seeing this type of tactic by a lot of these IoT botnets lately, right? Because they don't want to have any other botnets competing with them on an exposed device or on a compromised device. It's seems like this is the normal behavior now by a lot of these botnets, especially the Mirai variants.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, basically, I think since it's a new pivot also, they want to have exclusive access to it. And also maybe it's easier for them to control by blocking access to these ports.
It's intriguing to think about how since 2015 CVEs are exploited, right? And we sort of have gotten numb to, these types of exploits now, where we almost have taken it for granted that, patch management and vulnerability management does not really work in the IT space and definitely not working in the OT space. So this seems to be like this, foundational recurring issue, right? Which is why, these, types of, botnets seem to succeed, especially through larger organizations, through the network gateways, where we have sort of the delineation between IT and OT is, not, really working from a convergence point of view, right? From a security view. So we see a lot of organizations that have these OT assets and not segregated, and segmented enough. Once you get into the network gateway, the concept of this whole perimeter security and defense in depth, that we've always employed, right? And it's no longer, working efficiently given all of, these types of exploits.
That is excellent point, Bindu. And as we know, I mean, it just takes one point basically move around, right? One weak point just to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many plethora of IoT devices in various forms. I mean, IoT, even a specific router could fall into IoT devices with something else. That's one of the problems. And also the challenge in updating the firmware.
In like a mid to large size business, even, there's probably tons of IoT devices that they don't even know exist. Whether it's a conferencing system that's just there by an outside vendor, or some sort of other security devices like IP cameras that were also set up by an outside vendor. They're using their network, and they're who knows how they were deployed by the vendor, and they're all sitting there, and probably getting an inventory of them is even difficult.
Yeah, and it looks like a global asset inventory by the malicious actor is much more efficient than the parent organization, right? Because they're not able to keep up, whereas the malicious actor is able to go after exactly that weakness.
Sometimes with these are not easy to update the patch. Patches are okay, but sometimes the firmware needs to be updated.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit trickier and technically challenged, right? I think there also lies some sort of problem.
Documentation is key, right? So if you do know that these are firmware that cannot be easily upgraded, at least are you aware of that risk, right? And have you segmented enough? When we are working with various organizations, and to your point, Manish, even mid to larger organizations where, you feel like they're trying to sort of get a grasp of all of the security threats coming at them, and this sort of falls, sort of outside of that top 10 list of things to do.
Right. Because it's, for these devices, it's more of getting you some sort of functionality that the business needs. And not some, it's not so much about, like securing the device is an afterthought almost, or, even if it is an afterthought, that would be good. It's maybe not even thought of at all, which is unfortunate.
And just to wrap it up, the 6 ports they mentioned, some of the ports we already know, 23 are telnet ports, but some like 7447 and 35,000 ports, they're specific to TR069, which are typically used in Netgear devices, and another port 5023 is used by Hawaii. So in addition to the telnet ports, they are also targeting the specific manufacturer-based device targets also. And there is another port, 58,000. No known details yet, but I don't know why it's been used. But these are the 6 ports the specific botnet at this time is operating, maybe trying to target. And what are the recommendations, right? the recommendations, some we already discussed. I think first and foremost would be usage of strong passwords. That would be the first deterrent. And the second one, it's not easy, but we have to say it. I think updating to the latest firmware. That would be, those two would be the key against actually defending against these kind of IoT botnets. And on the Microsoft research blog, actually, they have much more additional details, like in-depth details about what other CVEs they're targeting for specific type of device. So it's a good read. But I think I just want to bring it to the point that there's a new pivot targeting the network gateways, which is of much concern to organizations.